Okay, good morning, everybody. Who attended Devs on Stage? Wasn't that fun? Well, this is a great segue, actually, because we're talking about how we use customer feedback to improve Tableau. So today, we'll go over some of the steps we take to use your feedback in our software development process. And then we'll share also a little bit about what we do to bring the voice of the customer deep within the heart of the development organization. My name's Michelle Dakota, and I'm product manager for customer programs at Tableau. The fabulous thing about Tableau is that we care so much about your voice. A role was created within the development organization so that we can bring that voice of the customer feedback right into the development team. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do to make that happen. I'm joined today by Wes Wu, who's a senior product manager in the file formats team. Wes is right here, and we've got Amy Alberts as well. She's manager in user research. Whoops. So we'll go through Wes's share out on some customer interviews and how that impacted our development process and informed roadmaps, followed by Amy Alberts, who will give an overview of what she calls expert review. So you'll hear about incorporating some user research techniques. And then finally, we will give you a layout of some of our customer programs that really bring that voice of the customer right into the development organization and makes customer feedback accessible by the development team. We're lucky at Tableau because our senior management really supports a focus on the customer, all the way to Adam Solipsky. And later, we'll give some updates on these different customer programs. We have customers in the office to talk to the dev team. We also comb the forums for your ideas and feedback. We partner with customer success. And then, of course, we have pre-release and the just announced, for example, 2019.1 beta. We get lots of feedback from those programs, and I'll tell you more about that as we go through. And finally, we get feedback from Tableau Zen Masters, which you saw them on stage this morning. They're really specialists that help us in the development process. So with that, we'll turn things over to Wes Wu to kick off with his own stories from the development team. Wes?
All righty, thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here in room 397, I think the highest and furthest point in the convention center. The air is a little different up here, maybe. My name is Wes Wu. I'm a product manager, like Michelle said, for the file formats team here at Tableau. Very exciting. We deal with everything workbook, XML related, and when I joined almost 3 years ago at Tableau, my job and our first mission was to figure out what Tableau wanted to do with backwards compatibility. So I don't know for anyone who may remember it back then, the Tableau story around backwards compatibility was we didn't have any. You open an older workbook in Tableau, we just said, hey, you should upgrade this workbook on save. And kind of the only thing that customers had to do was like they would open the workbook in Notebook and Notepad, change the version number, and pray that it worked. So that was kind of our job. The team was formed. I came on board, and we had to figure out what to do. And kind of there were some assumptions internally around, customers either need this or don't need this, or we can just make a little bit of functionality and kind of get on to other different things. And, that quote's from me. Shortly after joining, we kind of went around and saying, how do we figure this out? We should probably talk to customers. And in talking to customers, it saved us, I say months here, but it could even be years. Years of development time were kind of cut off of our roadmap and our plans just from talking to customers and figuring out, like, what do users actually want and actually need, and how do we justify that? So there's Robert Rouse. He's a former Zen master. He grew up here in Louisiana in Shreveport. I haven't seen him yet at the conference, but I'm pretty sure he's here because I don't think he'd give up an opportunity to come close to home while talking Tableau. But Robert, I met him at a customer advocacy program, as they were known back then, but now I think they're called customer success summits. But I met him at one of those customer meetings in Austin in 2016. And I don't know if anyone knows Robert, but if anyone does, he's a very vocal Zen master. He is not afraid to tell a relatively new PM to Tableau what he thought and kind of what his opinions were and what he thought was great and what he thought was not great. And you know, some of the stories I'm sharing today is Robert gave us some very precise and specific feedback that helped us make a very specific and impactful and small change, which is what product managers really like to do. We want to do impactful things that kind of don't cost so much. So this is really great when we saw it. So Robert and some other Zen masters there at that summit too pointed out to us that this is an old dialogue that pops up when you open a version, a workbook of Tableau that's older. And it used to just say like, hey, this is an older version of workbook. It's going to be upgraded when I save it. I'm not going to tell you exactly which version. And Robert told us that when he and Zen masters, you know, who do consulting, they open a lot of older workbooks. When they saw this, literally what they did, so they closed Tableau immediately. Just Alt F4, Alt Q, closed it out, and they opened an earlier version. So they started stepping back. If I opened this in 10.5, they would immediately close 10.5 and open the workbook in 10.4. Same thing happened. They would close it, immediately open in 10.3, 10.2, 10.1, 9.3. Oh, good. The dialogue stopped. This must be a 9.3 workbook. I will then proceed with what I'm doing because they did not want to upgrade the workbook. They were opening a customer workbook. They wanted to open it in that version, make an edit or a change, and save it, and not have it be blown away to where now the customer couldn't use it. Which is crazy, right? That's bolt action workbook loading. I'll ask them, like, don't you just want to like go and open the workbook and take a look at the version number? And he's like, no, this is annoying but faster for us. We do this all the time. Sometimes I don't know where the workbook is. It's in a weird folder, and I have to go digging for it. So we do this. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And they're like, yeah, can't you just put the version number in there? I'm sure you guys know it. I'm like, yeah, we do know it. We do know it. So what we did, we just put it in there. So based on feedback from Robert and some of the other Zens and customers there, something very easy for us. We took that number that just floats around in memory somewhere. We put it in that dialogue. And after we did this, Robert and all the other folks don't have to open the workbook in all these different versions, right? They just see, hey, this is 9.3. I'm going to close 10.5. I'm going to go open 9.3. I'm going to go about my business. So I like this story because it's a good, it's our tactical example, right? We talk to customers. And this is the kind of thing where, we go in at events like TC or, customer conversations. Something like this doesn't always come up because it's very discreet and it's very small. We like to walk through sort of larger customer scenarios at events like this, like, oh, tell us about your problem, your workflow. We get a big whiteboard. We start doing a bunch of stuff. And something small like this is kind of like a weird anecdote. It's like a nugget that comes up in only kind of specific conversations. I mean, for us, this was like hours of engineering time. Of course, we had to test and release it and ship it, and that took a little while. But, from a product development standpoint, this is relatively straightforward, and it had material, measurable customer impact. And again, this is only something we could have got from a interaction like that at a customer advocacy summit. Kind of the part two, the second half of kind of my story to share with you guys today is, we had the short term, the kind of tactical impact that we have from talking to customers. What do we do for the more strategic, the longer term sort of feedback and information? And kind of I mentioned at the beginning of my little spiel here is that when I first came on, we were really testing kind of assumptions we had internally. We kind of had assumptions of, yeah, I'm sure customers have compatibility problems. Their story isn't great with how Tableau deals with older versions of workbooks or just different versions in general. Internally, we thought that we could just do a little bit. Something better than just having customers open a workbook in Notepad and change the number and hope it works. That kind of sucked. Could we just get away with doing something a little lighter? Is it just downgrade to the previous version? Do we have to do any sort of better functionality in there? Because we always have things we want to work on at Tableau. So we had our internal thoughts, anecdotes. We had idea form input, but kind of what we really want to do early on is we should ask customers. We should really see what's going on. We shouldn't make assumptions, no matter how major or minor we think something is, we should really talk to people. So I'm happy to say that's what we did. We actually went and talked to our customers, and we did that at a variety of avenues and locations. We went to, my first TC was TC 16 in Austin, Texas. We also did it again at TC 17 in fabulous Las Vegas. And that's actually a picture of me. Look at me, I'm kneeling down on my laptop. Over there at the Customer Advocacy Program in Austin, and that's where I met Robert. I think Robert's right there. Yep, crouching down. Folks from Dell, Apple, other Zen Masters. Really great opportunity for us to get very targeted, high value, impactful feedback. And of course, we also reviewed ideas from the Ideas Forum, the Community Forum, and got a lot of information from there as well. And what do we learn from talking to everyone? Well, we learned that even experienced users like Zen Masters do not know what is going on in our versions. That's an assumption we made internally at Tableau because we live in this stuff every day. We're like, oh yeah, of course customers know that level of detail calculations were added in Tableau 10. Of course they know. They know when heat maps were put in. They know when all this blah, blah, blah. They don't. Zen's didn't. I asked Robert, I was like, hey, do you know when this? He's like, no. I know it roughly came in around this time. That's why I do weird things like opening your workbook repeatedly in different versions. So that was very revealing, right? That's an assumption we had internally that proved to be untrue. Even our most seasoned power users didn't always know when our stuff was, so they couldn't just say, I opened a workbook with a level of detail calculation. It's probably from 10.1. They don't know that. The other thing we learned is that minimal, the minimal viable product, as we like to say in product management, the bare bones is helpful because it's better than nothing. The existing scenario at that time was having customers open workbooks in Notepad. Anything we could do to improve that is helpful, but the bare minimum prototypes we showed, where it was literally just, here's a little flyout menu that said downgrade to Tableau 10.5, 10.4, 10.3, while helpful, again, because even though customers don't know what features are in these older versions, it was helpful to some extent, but it'd be great if we actually told them what was happening, right? What features are they losing or gaining by doing the upgrade and downgrade? Where are those things? Is it on worksheet 1, worksheet 2? So that was great, excellent feedback to kind of take back to the roadmap discussion. And then finally, that customer compatibility scenarios can be really easy or can be really complex. On the easy side is this, I accidentally upgraded my workbook. Our company is normally using 10.4, for example. I just downloaded the new beta for the release of Tableau. I accidentally upgraded my workbook. I need to roll it back one step. That's relatively straightforward from a engineering standpoint. But then we talked to folks like other customers at the Customer Advocacy Program that told us like crazy things, where it's like we run 6 versions of Tableau internally. We let the teams do whatever they want. IT supports one central server, but marketing, finance, design, product management, they all do their own thing. And we allow that in IT, and we kind of have to support it. And it just blew my mind. It's like, whoa, you have multiple versions of server, multiple versions of desktop. And for them, something very simple and bare bones kind of wouldn't really work, right? It would only do one step where they really need to cover a gamut of supported versions. So that was also amazing information. So what do we do with that information? Because hopefully we wouldn't just not do anything with it. We materially changed our roadmap plan. Originally, when I joined the team and kind of our original charters, we were going to make kind of the cheap and cheerful, as we said internally, the minimal viable product. We're going to get the basic version out there, and kind of that was it. Our longer-term roadmap, other elements on it, infrastructure, related to but not explicitly for customer functionality. We went in there and we changed that. So we kind of kept the original plan of let's do something to help customers. So that's when we put in, I don't know if anyone remember the original save as older version. I think we put out around 10.4, 10.5. It was just that flyout I described. You clicked export as older version, a little menu came out that just had version numbers on it. Not super helpful, but better than nothing. And it let customers, where they knew explicitly what they wanted to do, they could step back to that older version. We then hardened into our plans, we need to make something better. So that's where we call it internally hi-fi or high fidelity, but really it's that better and more full-featured. export as older version, and I believe download as older version is coming soon in 19.1, to where we show when you're downgrading to that earlier version of Tableau, we tell you what features are being changed. So if you're downgrading from 18.1 to 10.5, if you have content in there that is not supporting that older version, we tell you. And we can kind of give you, I think we give you like a rough score as well of this is going to be a major degradation. You should check your workbook after you do it. Or it's just minor, it's just going to be text or display. It's likely going to not affect the functionality of the workbook. But again, you should still check it. That's was something we did directly based off customer feedback, because again, even our power users like Zens don't know exactly what's happening in their workbooks and files. So we should tell you because we know that. And kind of lastly, based on all the information we gather from all our different venues, we really refined kind of our long-term roadmap vision. We really are driving toward and are confident that Tableau users probably do not want to worry about what version of workbook they're opening. It should be something that's more akin to, like Adobe Photoshop or other enterprise-grade applications, where if you see a .twib extension, and you have a version of Tableau that's relatively recent, you should feel confident in opening that workbook. Because even our power users don't know what's going on. They shouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. We really should be like all these other applications that just do this more seamlessly. So that's kind of our long-term vision. We got our executive support behind it. Internally, we're just driving toward like, how can we make that happen? In a variety of ways. And it was really just based on all this feedback we got from customers, right? Again, it's that months and years of savings because, internally, anecdotally, we kind of had thoughts around how customers did these sort of things. And it didn't really prove out to be true. So I've talked for a while. Wrapping up, what did we talk about today? We talked about how Tableau, the product management organization, how we talk to customers in a variety of ways, like the customer advocacy. I think it's called the Customer Success Summit now, but it's still going on. TC, customer meetups, ideas forum, how we reached out, what we did with that information, right? How do we make a discrete, short-term but still impactful change? How do we change our roadmap long-term for our feature team? How can you participate in these feedback sessions? You're here at TC, which is excellent. You can always corner product managers like me and talk to me about your problems and scenarios, but that gives a certain kind of feedback and a certain kind of information. If you get the opportunity to, do look for places like the Customer Success Summits. Look for programs that Michelle runs, like devs in the or customers in the office, where the opportunity for your organization to come into the Tableau building and talk to us about your problems. Post in the ideas forum. Do all these things as we look and we do things with that information. And kind of lastly, this isn't a Tableau special sauce. You can do this at your companies too. It's really easy. It's great that we have set programs like this for us, but holistically, just call a customer, talk to them, go to conferences like this, take the opportunities to kind of talk to your users and sort of figure out things that they want to do, but have those conversations like I had with Robert, where he just tells me this very memorable story of just opening like workbooks one by one in older versions, and this is like a great opportunity for us to make an impactful change. Like, have those kinds of conversations, because those things come out in very unique and distinct places. But yeah, you can do it too, and it's great, and it saves you a lot of time. And solve those weird anecdotes and assumptions that you or your executives have internally. All right, with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Amy to the stage to talk about how the user research team at Tableau benefited tremendously from talking to customers as well.
Thank you. Everyone hear me okay? Good? Okay, all right. So thank you all for coming. My name is Amy Alberts. Thank you, Wes, for your awesome examples about file, which is a hard thing to talk about and make interesting. So I manage the user research team at Tableau. We're a part of the development team, and we're part of the design and research and content team. And so I am a cognitive psychologist. There's other people on my team who are like neuroscientists, also psychologists, experimental psychologists. So it's our job to kind of help the development team figure out how to translate the things that people do, what they say, et cetera, into features that will really work for our customers. And so if you want to meet any of us or interact with the kind of stuff that we do, one of the things that a big part of the data that we collect throughout the year comes from Tableau Labs, which is downstairs in the Data Village. If you haven't already visited us, please do. We're running a bunch of studies, et cetera, so you can go get your mind read by us. So anyway, what I'm going to talk to you all about today is a methodology that we use in user research called an expert review. There's a lot of different methodologies that we use in user research. There's usability studies, we do ethnographic research, et cetera. So expert review is just one of them, but it's one that I think tells a good story and is something that I think pretty much anyone could kind of pick up and use if they have a question for their customers. So I wanted to talk about it today. So, of course, we're going the wrong way. So when any of us are building something, especially like when we're building software inside Tableau, like we're building, one dialogue, one experience for literally thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people. And the analogy I like to use is, what would it be like to make a pizza for 1,000 people or 10,000 people? And you have to take into account dietary restrictions. You have to imagine that people, some people like white sauce, not red sauce. There are people in the world who would put shrimp on their pizza, like I found here. And there's other, I think, monsters in the world who wouldn't put pineapple on their pizza, et cetera. So, just imagine how hard this is, right? You have to do a lot of work mentally to figure out how to make this pizza. Supreme isn't going to cut it, So how do you make decisions that will benefit your customers and not, totally just mess everybody up, while at the same time not making different versions of your software over and over again for all the niche needs that people have? One of the ways that makes software development really easy is if you know the rules. If you know the rules about how things work inside somebody's brain. And so an example of that is something like date, okay? For those of us in the room that are from North America or at least the kind of the Western world, we all kind of have a shared idea about how date works, right? It's like you go from year to month. I always forget quarter because that always screws me up. So year to quarter to month to day, et cetera, right? It's just it's natural. We just know that. Same for the geography, but geography is a good example of us in the United States. We have a good sense of the parts that make up a geographical part, but that is different if you go to Canada. It's different if you go to Europe, et cetera. But nevertheless, when you're building something, when we were building dates inside Tableau in the date part, we didn't have to ask any fundamental questions about how should date work, because we knew the rules about how it should work. The problem is what happens when you don't know the rules, when you're faced with having to bring something into your experience and you don't fundamentally understand how people think about it. And one of my favorite examples of this outside of the world of software is with Pampers. So the Pampers diapers. So they were expanding their market from the US into Japan. And they are kind of, well known for being great at marketing and packaging. They're kind of the Disney of personal care packaging. And so they didn't really change anything outside of localizing the language when they brought Pampers to Japan. And for those of you who are parents, you might know that the metaphor that they use on the Pampers box is of the stork, right? So you have the picture of the stork on the Pampers box, which is really sweet. I think here's an example of it, where you have the stork with the baby, and it's this myth that we all know in the Western world about the stork bringing the baby to the new parents. The problem is that myth doesn't exist in Japan. The myth in Japan is that a giant peach will either fly through the air or come down a river and bring the new baby to the parents via that method. So now imagine you're a Japanese mom or dad, and you go to the store to pick up some diapers, and you see this box of Pampers, and there's a big bird with a giant beak that looks kind of like a, dangerous, carrying a baby that looks like it's in a garbage bag, right? Like, it's just not going to work. Like, the translation just didn't work. And of course, it's fixable and all that kind of stuff. They didn't mean to miss out on that, but this is a great example of just not knowing the rules, like making an honest mistake. And for us at Tableau, we were kind of faced with this situation where we're like, we have to introduce a feature into the product where we actually don't know the rules about it, so how do we do that and do it well? And the example of that is the ISO 8601 calendar. So I'd love to see a show of hands of anyone who has heard of ISO 8601, know it, has used it before. Smattering. Okay, all right, so I'm going to do a terrible job of explaining it because I still don't quite understand it, but it is a calendar type, like Gregorian is a calendar type. That's the one that we kind of all know in our heads. ISO 8601 is a calendar type that is used primarily in the financial sector, and it is a week-based calendar, okay? And there's a very specific rule that how the week begins in a given year. But so it's like every single year has a start of a week, and then the rest of the calendar is a 52-week calendar, and that's it. And it's a really important type of calendar for us to have in Tableau because it's not something that you can kind of fake inside Tableau with like calculations and stuff. We really needed to build it into the product, and it was really important to our customers to have it. So, we had it on the forums, there was a lot of people upvoting it, wanting ISO 8601 because they were using it because, a lot of financial institutions, they were needing this calendar type because that's how they share data between each other, et cetera. So it was really good for us to get it into the product, but we were like, we don't really know a lot about this because we don't use it, and we don't understand the implicit rules behind it. So when the team came to me that was building this feature, they asked me, so what do we do? Like, how do we know if we're making the right assumptions about this calendar? Because we can make some assumptions about how it should work. And my recommendation to them was like, we can go talk to customers. We can like recruit some people in that have heard of ISO 8601. But I don't know if that's going to get us a good answer because we really need a lot of context. Like, we need people to tell us like not only how it should work, but why it should work that way, and kind of educate us, like build an empathy bridge between those of us who only know Gregorian to the other people who know, ISO 8601. And so we decided our best bet was to go talk to some of our Zen masters. And those Zen masters specifically because they work with a lot of, there's specific ones who work with a lot of financial institutions, are in Europe and different parts of the world that use this calendar a lot. So we figured, okay, we can go talk to them. Because in my mind, a Zen master is like a fortune teller. Like, I can just put stuff to them and they'll just tell me the truth, right? And they will be essentially like proxies to what hundreds, if not thousands of customers will think and need. And so that was the whole point then of bringing them in and doing what is called a streamlined cognitive walkthrough, but it's essentially an expert review of having them look at the user experience that we have prototyped and walking them through how it would work and asking them a few questions, which was, does this make sense? And if not, why? And not only like why because it doesn't make sense, but why? Tell me a story. Tell me a story of a customer that, that this would not work for, et cetera. And so we had some questions for them. The team had built a prototype. So very generally, we wanted to know where should the calendar live. So if somebody had a workbook that had data in it that was of a date type of ISO 8601, where would you change it from Gregorian to ISO 8601? So we want to know, all right, did we put it in the right spot? We also wanted to know what happens when you drill down into date, because this is like fundamentally kind of a different mental model for us. where you have a year and then it goes immediately to week. So we decided, okay, like we'll make that way then. It was like year, quarter, week, done. And did that make sense? Seemed like it from at least what we saw of how you define the ISO standard. And then what happens with month, right? Like what happens if somebody needs month? Like we figured every once in a while someone might want July to show up on a viz. How would they do that? So we basically batted around 600. So we put these user experiences, I'll call them UI, in front of the Zens and talk them through what was working. And on the top one, you can see, like basically, they knew immediately where you should go to change the date, the calendar type from Gregorian to ISO 8601. So we're like, okay, we're all good there. And then where should you go to change the month? You know, so they was like, I'd go to the pill and I would click down and I would expect to see month there. And we're just like, yes, we got it, nice job, we're all okay. And then we did this where we started to drill down into the date part and we skipped over month and they were just like, hold on, like hissing and booing and bad things. And, you know, for us though, it was, you know, what we had done and what I was intuiting when listening to them was that we had fundamentally broken this intuition that they had, and we didn't know why. We knew that, you know, we had at least followed the standard, so tell us why. And it was really interesting to basically go around the room with the Zens and have them tell us all the different stories of why we couldn't just take this ISO definition and force it into the user experience. And some of that had to do with like, okay, yeah, ISO says there's no months, but human beings thinks there's months. Like, why wouldn't you have it as part of the UI? Like, so there's some of those things too where we just had to like not be, you know, so black and white about the way that we introduced this feature. So, you know, needless to say, with, you know, talking to our customers who are Zens, but really using them like these fortune tellers, like these kind of mediums, these proxies to our customers, really helped us build this bridge between what we thought was true and what we could intuit might be true for our customers to, you know, what we hope is really actually true. And usually with an expert review, that really gets us into a good spot to get a really great working prototype that then we transition into deeper testing with, you know, what I joke is like real human beings, like people who aren't Zen masters and aren't, you know, engineers. But I figured, you know, one thing is for our customers, you all are builders in some way. If you're not building software, you are building dashboards, you're building data sources, you're building stuff for other people. And it might be beneficial for you to get a little bit of advice for how to do an expert review if that's something that you might be interested in doing. So I figured I'd give you some advice because I'm a big fan of doing user research in any kind of way. So the next section is just some way to think about expert review if you decide to do it. So the first part of an expert review is, I'll give this example. So I have a friend who I went to college with, and she builds houses in the Midwest. And the houses that she builds are these like structurally sound homes, right? Where the foundation is amazing. It can handle the crazy, you know, winters that the Midwest has, and hurricanes and that kind of stuff. And tornadoes, like I don't think they have hurricanes in the Midwest, but they have tornadoes. So tornado, and you know, it's great, right? So like this house, she's a builder and she can build that house. And then you go inside her house and it looks like that, right? So even though she's a builder, she's not that great of a user of the house. Like she can't make it look pretty on the inside. She can make it look, you know, sound. And so the pithy piece of advice that I have is you don't want to talk to the person who can sell you the sheetrock. You want to talk to the person who's going to go use that room that the sheetrock is going to sit in, right? So the builders are the people who use the thing, are not the people who make the thing. And that is a really important distinction to make when you are asking an expert to review the stuff that you're doing. The next thing, so this is a picture of my cat, Lucy, who, the analogy here is that the experts are essentially your frenemy, where they're not going to be scared to tell you that your baby's ugly. Like, they are going to give it to you straight. Lucy has no problem coming up to me while I'm standing and crawling up my leg, right, with her claws, right? She loves me, but she also has no problem drawing blood. And an expert will do that for you, right? And you want an expert to do that, to tell you things straight, to hurt your feelings, to not play along. Which brings us to the next point. The final point about an expert is that they're kind of like a bucking bronco. And this is what it's like to talk to the Zen Masters sometimes, is that they're just all over the place. Like, you're trying to get them to talk about the calendar, and they're talking about data sources, and they're talking about LOD calcs, and they're just like, they won't play along, but this is good. It's good because they're giving you what you need in terms of the greater context of the work that you're doing. Nothing sits in isolation. No dashboard sits in isolation, no data source, no feature inside Tableau sits all by itself. It has all these things working around it. And an expert will be able to see that holistic view of things and tell you how to think about it. And so it could be super annoying, and it might be frustrating to deal with a conversation like that, but it's good for you, and I highly recommend doing it. So, to summarize then, your experts are not the builders, they're not your friend, and they're not going to play along, and that's really, really good. So hopefully if you get the chance, please do some expert reviews for the stuff that you build. I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle, who's going to talk more about the more of the research that we do inside Tableau so that hopefully you all can get involved. So over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Amy. And we'll take questions at the end, so don't worry, we'll pause for questions. So a little bit about some of the programs we have within the development organization. I'll go over a few of these one by one. I'm happy to answer some questions. This is really how we bring your voice to life within the organization. We think it's so important that our 1,000 developers have that sense of the customer and how the customer uses Tableau, which is very varied and diverse, as you all know. So the first is customers visit the office. And we bring them in to visit the development team. We curate each of these visits, so I talk to each customer who comes in this way so they understand what they're getting into. And they usually present use cases to the actual development team. Sometimes they'll open up a dashboard, or they might have a presentation. They'll talk through how they actually implement and use Tableau. They'll share some of their problems and issues. But the heart of this meeting is really just about giving our big team, and often some of our new developers, that view of how the customer is actually using Tableau. Then they have small group sessions on topics of interest. So if you ever came in on one of these programs, you would have a small group session with our product management team on areas of interest to you. And in these sessions, you again share some use cases, you might go through some of the issues you're having, and you really get some of that one-on-one attention, and the actual team gets to meet customers right in the office. We host these in Seattle, but we also have offices throughout the US, and if you knew someone in London who wanted to come into the office, or in Singapore or Japan, we can make that happen as well. We also host office hours on the forums, so we've encouraged our product management team to feature topics on the forums and open an Ask Me Anything thread, go through the forums for feedback, look at the ideas area, and then host a webinar, so a 1-hour session where customers call in and they get an overview of some new functionality, and they might have time with Kent Martin from the Maps team. He talks about what's new, but then he also takes questions on mapping or suggestions and ideas. It's a great way to engage with the team. And then we engage with customer success. So we have a customer success organization at Tableau that's really focused on how things are going for you. And we engage with them. We exchange data and use cases, but we also send members of the team to some of their events. And so that's part of what Wes talked about. Out of my organization and in customer programs, we help prepare some of those developers and product managers to go out to these events and validate topics, to investigate things that they're working on, and really explore ideas with customers in person. And of course, we have our pre-release program. So hopefully you're involved in beta. We have a pre-release program that features early software for your feedback, so things before beta, as well as beta. We just made 2019.1 available via the site. And if you're not involved in the program, I can help you out right after this. But also, you could just Google Tableau coming soon or Tableau beta. You'll get pointed to a web page, and then if you just sort of follow the trail of instructions, you go ahead and set up your Tableau ID, and then you can go right into the site as a customer, and you can grab that beta software. And from in that site, you can provide feedback, and we review all the feedback. It comes right into a group of people. I work right in, that's my team. We review the feedback, and we make it available to the product managers on the product. And it's extremely valuable for us to hear about how Tableau beta or early feedback is working in your environment. You can also use this site just to find out what's coming soon. We have scenarios there. We're going to post some data, some workbooks from Tableau Conference that are used in the labs demo area. Some customers said they loved those workbooks, and we're going to make those available in the site after TC. So I encourage you to go and explore that. It's open to any customer. And then here's a picture of the Zen Masters. So Tableau Zen Masters, they were featured this morning. If you were here bright and early, they came on stage. They're so valuable. Our ambassadors and Zen Masters are really experts at Tableau, and we make them available within the development organization to the team to talk to. So any product manager could reach out to a group of Tableau Zen Masters and ask some questions and get feedback right away. So at Tableau, we've found that customer feedback is really key, and I hope you take some of these ideas home with you when you return to your workplace, because they could help you with your products and services. There's just nothing like getting some of that real-life customer feedback. Participate in forums. We take a look at all of that feedback. We also analyze what's coming in through the Ideas Forum. You could sign up for beta or early feedback, and then we have Tableau Labs, as Amy mentioned, right downstairs in Data Village. There's a big space called Tableau Labs. We have staffed that with developers from the team. So those are not marketing people like in the front area. Those are all members of the actual dev team. And they're there, they could demo encryption at rest if you got really excited about that. There's people there that could demo Tableau Prep. You could ask some server questions or give suggestions. You can take a look at the new mobile interface. They're all right there in that labs area. If you want to talk about transparency or explore more about NLP, ask data, you can come there to that area. And then we have activities running in that section as well. So you could have a deeper dive into giving us feedback. Members of the user research team are running studies right downstairs. So we welcome you to participate in that. And feel free to reach out. I'm available. Amy and Wes, we're here now for questions, but you could also feel free to send us a message. We'd be happy to hear from you. So thank you very much for coming out and taking time out of your morning. We really appreciate it. And let us know now if you have any questions. Thanks. I see a question, and Amy said that we looked like talk show hosts, so I'm going to run over here. We have a question.
Yeah, my name is Mark Pound. Just asking, do you guys get any telemetry or user data from the application and how people are using it?
So we have started getting, Tableau Online has telemetry, and then Tableau Prep does as well. And so we are starting to use that telemetry to, the way that we think about it is it's a kind of a three-pronged approach to telemetry, where there's service intelligence, which is server uptime and traffic and that kind of stuff. There's BI, business intelligence, which are like KPIs and DAO and MAU and kind of your typical measurements of your customer engagement. And then there's also what we call DI, which is design intelligence, where and this is what we're really starting to build out now, where we look at how does the introduction of new features and functionality inside the product affect our customer behavior. So if we expect people to start doing more of some particular thing because we've now introduced a new feature, do we actually see that in the telemetry or not? So anyway, so we are building out a really much more robust telemetry story kind of as we speak.
Other questions? Oh.
I was curious how you all might use Tableau itself to communicate insights about user research or user feedback, and what sources do you connect, and how do you share that, if at all, with Tableau?
Great question. Do you want to start, and then I'll add more? Go.
Yeah, so we use Tableau for all of the telemetry work that we do. I've used Tableau so if you've seen the eye tracking research that we've done on dashboards, if you're familiar with that, so that's the reason I've done that research with Andy Cockreeve. We analyze that data in Tableau as well. And then we look at survey data. All of that is also inside Tableau. But we also use Tableau to look at whether or not we're going to run out of gratuity at during our lab sessions. Like, we're using it in all, kind of in every way. It's a part of the core mission statement and values of being a Tableau employee, is that we use our product. And so we do use it quite a bit.
Yeah, so for pre-release, we use Tableau, and I have a really fun, quick story. We launched a new site that is what brings you the software if you've ever come to pre-release, and that site itself generates reports and data. And so when we were kicking that off, running the prep alpha and then the prep beta off of that system, we gathered up the reports and made dashboards in Tableau. But then we worked with the vendor to build a Tableau data connector, and they built that, and we tested it for them, but they built it not just for us, but because we had so many joint customers. So we get the data, we can pipe it right off of that system into Tableau. And then we use Tableau to track things like downloads and feedback on early feedback or beta software, as well as a myriad of other things within our group as well. Wes, do you use Tableau?
Of course. I know for the file formats team, we have some amazing vizzes. One is a tree map in all rainbow colors that shows all the current versions of Tableau that are used by customers that connect to us on a daily basis, and it's very surprising. There's a lot of Tableau 8 still live in production that I have to support.
Yeah, and we used Tableau for lab staffing. We looked at the schedule and worked through conflicts, and that's how I know so easily that we staffed, just in the demo space, 1,100 shifts are staffed with 200 plus developers and product managers. So you should come down and talk to them. Any other questions? None? We'll stick around if you've got questions, and feel free to email us. Thank you very much for coming out. Enjoy the rest of TC.
Thank you.